tests become toxic when they start changing the way we think and feel about education. They become toxic when we start using the wrong tool the wrong way. But when we hold kids' graduation to that, that's toxic.
Finally, Wayne Au is a former public high school teacher. He is currently an associate professor in the School of Educational Studies at the University of Washington, Bothell. Au is also an editor with the social justice education magazine, Rethinking Schools. If you've never read it, please subscribe. He writes and speaks regularly about the problems with high-stakes standardized testing. Please welcome to the stage, Professor Wayne Au.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, that's better. As the last speaker this afternoon, I want to make sure the powers that be hear us and understand that no matter what they keep saying, when it comes to high-stakes testing, that we know better. Can I get that from you all? We know better. So they say that high-stakes testing will improve teaching, but we know better. We know that high-stakes testing breeds teaching to the test, that it promotes rote instruction and increases in lecturing. We know that high-stakes testing creates a culture of fear and anxiety for students and teachers, and we know that fear and anxiety do not promote quality performance in the classroom or anywhere else. We know that teachers are leaving the profession because of the focus on high-stakes testing. It does not actually allow them to teach. It doesn't allow them to be creative and dynamic, to be the professionals that they were trained to be. This is not improvement. Testing does not promote quality teaching because we know better. They say that high-stakes testing will improve the curriculum, but we know better. We know that high-stakes testing is shrinking the curriculum to math and literacy. We know that high-stakes testing has meant less art, less music, less recess, less time for lunch, less science, and less social studies, as schools scramble to focus only on the tests. And because it is not on the tests, we also know that there's less multicultural education in our curriculum. Instead of improving the curriculum, high-stakes tests are deadening learning and making schools even more alienating for even more of our children. We know better. They say that high-stakes testing provides accurate and objective measurement of teaching and learning. But we know better. We know that teaching and learning, teachers and students, human beings, human cultures, indeed, the human condition, cannot be reduced to a simple number. We know that there have been massive errors on high-stakes standardized tests, errors that have placed the futures of thousands of kids in jeopardy. More importantly, we know that test scores most strongly reflect access to resources outside of schools. We know that these tests are not objective measures of teaching and learning. We know better. They say that high-stakes testing should be used to evaluate teachers. But we say no. Why? Because we know better. We know that high-stakes test scores reflect poverty levels of the students more than they reflect the quality of the teacher in front of them. We know that using tests to evaluate teachers is fraught with statistical error, so much so that the American Statistical Association, along with many educational scholars, have warned against misusing test scores in this way. We know that teaching is so much more than a test score. Caring for kids, feeding kids, helping them grow and develop. We know that test scores cannot come close to capturing the work that teachers really do. We know better. They say that we can trust the companies who are making and scoring high-stakes tests. But we know better. We know that the testing market is in the billions of dollars and that the testing industry is run by mega corporations whose number one job is to make profits from your child. We know that these mega corporations hire underpaid, overworked temps who often work in test scoring sweatshops and spend no more than 30 to 60 seconds grading your child's essay tests. Imagine that, 30 to 60 seconds to determine your child's and your teacher's future. And we know that these corporations are harvesting your child's data, but we don't know what they're really doing with it. We will not trust them just because they say so. We know better. They say the tests will promote educational equality, but we know better. We know that in the history of standardized testing, this has never proven to be true. Never. We know that the heart of standardized testing, the measuring, the sorting, the ranking, for over 100 years has always reproduced race and class inequality. We know that low-income kids of color and bilingual children are feeling the worst effects of high-stakes testing, that these children are seeing the poorest quality of education, the most restricted curriculum, and the most rote instruction, and the least educational enrichment. And we know that particularly for black and brown children, high-stakes testing contributes directly to increased high school dropouts and increased chances of being incarcerated. Instead of promoting educational equality, we know that high-stakes tests entrench inequality. We know better. Finally, they say that high-stakes testing will fix public education, but we know better. We know that, thanks to No Child Left Behind, we have had 13 years of federal and state required high-stakes testing. We know that 13 years of high-stakes testing has not closed any test score achievement gaps. We know that after 13 years, high-stakes testing is an ineffective, failed policy meant to create massive failure. High-stakes testing is destroying public education, not fixing it, and we know better. High-stakes testing is a scourge on our system of public education, and we know that it needs to end, so end toxic testing now. Thank you.